I've lived 1,000 lives. I've piloted 1,000 souls. I've killed and fought at night just for another role.
This is the Happy Jacks RPG podcast, a roundtable discussion that's a mix of friendship, humor, unbridled enthusiasm, and tabletop RPG topics sent in from around the world.
Just for another role.
Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Happy Jacks RPG Advice Show, Season 36, Episode 13. I'm Riley.
I'm Rose.
And I'm Vixie.
And today we have the topics including Alverant asks about scheduling games, Gurg Murg asks about generic TTRPG systems, and Mike from New York State has a horror story with a successful ending, thanking safety tools. And just a preemptive heads up on that, we'll get to it again later. It does slightly involve monster or vampire children, so some trigger warnings might be in place for that. Just a heads up there. If you'd like to contribute a question or story to the show, please email us at happyjacksrpg@gmail.com or post in the hashtag mailbag channel of the Discord.
We're doing great.
One in doubt,
We
pour
are.
one out for the hosts.
Yeah, it's fine. You know what? Every once in a while, the Swedish chef just finds its way into me a little bit. So burger in the burger. All right. So far, we're not getting any
We
reports
have
of the
a
shows
from Gurg Murg.
Yeah, as you can tell, I am not Kimmy. I'm the slightly less adorable Riley. I'm sitting in for Kimmy tonight, but we will be watching to make sure that everything still sounds and looks good, and Kimmy sends you all her love. All right. Announcements. Our next game days will be in January. People are currently voting on which weekend in January. They're in the Discord, and we will announce it as soon as we have a date. Currently, the voting is neck and neck, so if you have a strong opinion and have not voted yet, now is the time to do it. That was a little ad-lib from me, so check it out. We have the link to the Discord right there in the chat. Go ahead and check out happyjacks.org, happyjacks.org/Discord if you want to vote or participate in our free community game days. We need players since we have a lot of GMs in our community. And our indie designer of the month for December is Jess Pendley, she, her. Jess Pendley is the co-founder of Underground Oracle Publishing, Unplaytested Presents, and the TTRPG Rising Tide community. Yay! You can find their stuff at undergroundoracle.com or by searching Underground Oracle on DriveThruRPG. Today's product that we are celebrating is Harrow, the Blighted Plain core book. Take to the water sands with your Scrap House crew and unlock the secrets of the Blighted Plain. Strike out from one of the 4 nations and claim precious resources from the ever-shifting landscape, or travel to wastes and ruins risen from the sands to discover old-world treasures and newly imbued sources of the Crystal Blight, radiant energy that generates magic-like effects and shapes all life on the Blighted Plain. During your travels, you'll outmaneuver your rivals, outrun ship-destroying leviathans, and overcome surges from planar tears and rifts to become legends. This sounds awesome. This is a Riley note. This just sounds really awesome.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Harrow, the Blighted Plain contains everything you need to explore this incredible crystal punk fantasy world. A sleek
punk,
narrative...
ooh.
Crystal punk. I like that. I know. That's a term I learned by saying it out loud in my mouth just now. It's a sleek, narrative-focused rules for story-based tabletop role-playing games that reward exploration and discovery. It is a concept-driven character creation system that allows you to choose from a myriad of options to play as your ideal character. A fully fleshed-out world with unique cultures, strange locations, and deep lore that provides an immersive role-playing experience. Sandship customization rules that allow every crew to alter and outfit their vessel to their needs, and more! Get it at undergroundoracle.com for $24.99. That's a pretty great deal for what sounds like a pretty badass little system. So shout out to Jess Pendley, our game designer of the month. And now we shall open up our mailbag.
I'll go ahead and take it from here with our first one. Jackers, I'm writing this at the end of June 2025. We are topical, if nothing.
Mm-hmm.
It's from this
Here
year.
at Happy Jacks.
Yeah.
It's from this year.
It's true.
We haven't gotten to the point where the top of the mailbag is a throwback episode.
Oh, God.
Yeah, that's fair.
Time traveling. It's great.
Yeah. I'm writing this at the end of June 2025. This is important because it frames the context of my question. This year, 3 RPG campaigns I joined collapsed due to real life events causing the GMs to cancel at last minute. These sessions were on Saturday afternoons. My question is, what is a good time of day and day of week to have an RPG session? Friday evenings through Sunday afternoons are traditional, but is it time to find a new tradition? Alverant.
Ooh. Oh,
Ooh.
well, that is the curse of all TTRPGs is scheduling, isn't it?
Yeah.
There's memes about this. Um,
There are?
So
I've never
many.
seen
it's
any of
like,
them. Really?
oh gosh. There's quite a few. I would say that weekends, depending on like that for me, I always put it up to a vote. When is everyone available and know how long you're signing up for
Yeah.
as well. And
It's
what
hard.
I
Yeah.
and what
I
you
do
can
the
commit
opposite.
to. Yeah?
Sorry,
Go
of
ahead.
course, delays.
Mhm.
I do the opposite. I figure out when I want to run a game and I put out the invite to a wide enough group of people that I can reasonably find a decent amount of people who can show up on that day. I find that I do better on specific times. Like mornings are far and away better for me than evenings. I have ADHD and my meds start to run off by the end of the day. And so if I want to be as sharp as I can be and as, paying attention to the campaign as I would like to be, uh, um, like to me, a Saturday morning is the best time for a campaign. And that's actually why I'm running one on a Saturday morning, but we'll get to that later.
Oh man. I think for me it depends on the game. So like for APs, I tend to pick the date first and then whoever's available will play on that date. But this gives me the vibe that like this person wants to do like an ongoing home game. So, and I would say like if you're going to do that, know that it number one it's ongoing, so it has no defined ending. So committing to how often you want to do this. Is this something you want to do weekly, bi-weekly, or monthly? Is the first step. The second step is what day works best for everyone who wants to play. So for example, like maybe this person has a specific group of people they want to play with. In that case, it's about like meshing schedules and seeing what day works for you. To me, um, the weekends are traditional because most people like a lot of people do 9 to 5s Monday through Friday. So maybe like Friday, Saturday, Sunday are all days that are pretty open to plan things like this. But
Hmm.
also we've reached a point in time where committing 3 to 4 hours of your day to a game can be a big ask, or at least I think depending on like where you are at in your life. For high schoolers, easy. For adults who are in their like early 30s to or early 30s to 40s, bit harder to
Yeah.
dedicate 4 hours of time, especially if you have other life obligations that you have to take care of. So I think a lot of it is about coming to the table and communicating and being willing to you know understand that not everyone is going to be available for that day, and being willing to compromise and find someone else if you need to, or be willing to play with less players. So like if you want 5 players, great, but if not all 5 people can commit, then play with 4, you know? Um so yeah, it's for me it's like what it can be very for a home game it can be very flexible. And I feel like that's a communication that's kind of a group decision to me,
Yeah.
and if nothing works, you got to find another table, you know?
Yeah.
Uh
Yeah.
In
but
this
that's
case, especially, sorry.
no, go ahead. Absolutely
I would say in
fine.
this case, feels like, especially in this case, it feels like what Alverant is saying is the GMs themselves were who had to cancel the game. So I think that like definitely goes into like what Rose was saying is like, hey, make sure your game is scheduled at a time when your GM is most likely going to be available. Because if you're
Yeah.
always like, if the GM is always trying to move stuff around to fit the game, I think that it would be like hard to like keep running that game because the GM's constantly going to be like, actually, you know what, this time it doesn't work out because my life got in the way. So that is definitely, I think, a big part of it, is making sure that the GM more than anybody else is available. Because like, yeah, I agree. You can play with less people. I think you need to not be precious about playing with the exact same people every time. I think like having people that can be reliable, like last minute fill-ins if you have people that aren't there, if you do want to have a bigger party, or having a group that doesn't necessarily get too precious about like, okay, I wasn't there this one session, so am I out of the story now? It's like, I've always played it where if someone's not there one particular session, we kind of just like softly pretend they're not there, and then like we don't really make it like we don't need to explain why your character's not there every time. Sometimes they're just not the focus of the story right now, and then kind of bring them back in later. But
Yep. No, I agree. And I think for me, when I say it's a group decision, that includes the GM. Like the GM needs to be aware of their schedule and be very
oh,
like, oh,
totally.
you know what I mean? Like, so it's definitely, I never mean to exclude the GM. Like, if the
I
GM's
didn't think
not
you
there, there's
did.
no game, right? So,
I didn't think you did, but you would say the thing about
okay.
like, oh, you can play with 4 people instead of 5 people.
Oh, yeah.
And that is true unless one of those people is the GM, because without the GM, there's no game at all. And that's what I meant.
Right,
Like,
exactly.
in this
Okay.
case, it felt like, I wasn't saying it about your thought. I was saying it about the original letter of like,
Got
it
it.
sounds
Got
like
it.
all these GMs were not in a good position to run these games at these times. And I agree, it's like, it's so hard to answer the question of what is a good time of day and week to have, because that's going to be different for every single group, right? Like
Yep.
like I right now, I'm in a situation where I'm pretty underemployed, so I would actually be way better off playing D&D, like role-playing games and stuff, in the middle of the week in the afternoon than I would be trying to, because I'm working on weekends. Ironically, I'm running D&D for kids on weekends, because turns out kids can't play D&D while they're at school unless, I mean, they can, and I have done it, but in general, it's like my company has to operate at times when kids are not normally in school, so that's when I'm busy
Right.
doing job stuff. And so
Mm-hmm.
if I want to play games with my friends for fun, I have to work around that schedule.
Right. And like in my case, like I have a 9 to 5 and family obligations, so my best days are like Fridays and Saturdays. And maybe Thursday nights if I can swing it. But like anything else makes it hard for me because I have to go to work the next day, or I might have to like I might have something scheduled. So for example, like if I scheduled my like I have a dentist appointment scheduled on Friday, and like I had a TTRPG scheduled on top of that. No, that doesn't work for me. Stuff like that
You could
gets in the
try it.
way.
You could try it. I think it might be fun to give it a shot. Maybe like, okay,
Just
roll. Okay, roll a check and then spit. Okay. Yeah.
it'll be
Um,
fine.
as far as like I think it's interesting, Rose, that you said that you do your best gaming at Saturday in the morning, because I just had a conversation with a co-GM at the camp that I work at, and he was saying it's actually really hard for him to be playing D&D on weekend mornings, or like in the middle of the afternoon, because for him, he feels like role-playing games should always be played at night when it's dark out. He says it feels like it's a campfire story kind of vibe for it, and like that it's always a little off for him when it's not happening at that time. And I had never thought of it before. Like, I honestly, it never once occurred to me like, oh, there's a right time of day to play role-playing games. Maybe because I just always want to be playing role-playing games, so I'm like the right time is when anybody will roll dice with me. But yeah, it was interesting that some people have very strong opinions about it.
Oh, yeah, about time of day. Like for me, it doesn't. The time of day doesn't matter. My mental health does, because I will if
Mm.
I'm really stressed, or if I'm really burned out because I've been doing a lot. I won't be able to run a good game. I won't be able to give my play like as a game master. This is a game master perspective, and even as a player, like I wouldn't be able to give 100%. And like I love playing, and I want to give that to my table. I want to come in and really help tell the story that we're trying to tell. And what also matters to me too, like as a player, is the story itself. Like if it's a story I like in a world that I really love, I will give 110% to that story because I will be in it, you know. But if it's a story that like just isn't doing it, that I'm not vibing with, I won't stay at the table. I'm not gonna
Yeah.
lie. I'm just,
Yeah.
just like I'm sorry, I can't. But those are the factors for me that really affect me. Like things like when it comes to time of day, any time of day except like super late at night when I'm falling asleep.
Tired. Yeah.
Yeah, I've actually had a couple of games like that where I've been on, and these are APs too, where I've fallen asleep on camera because it was like 2 in the morning, and my body was like, "Shutdown has been engaged. You cannot stop it. Your brain is about to restart."
Yeah.
Um, So yeah, so it's stuff like that you don't want to happen, but like yeah, that's my time of day. Like, can we not do it at like, the 11th hour
Yeah.
of the evening, perhaps? Maybe.
Yeah, I think it also helps, and we had some good suggestions from chat too that I want to talk about.
Mhm.
But I also
Ooh.
think that like, especially if you can, it depends on how often you want to play. Because I think if
Mhm.
you're willing to play more often, but maybe for shorter times, that can work a little better. Because maybe like you set a cap, like we're gonna play for like 3 hours. We'll play like once a week or every other week,
Mhm.
and that way it starts to feel like having it's the same as having like the stereotypical like game night where like, oh, we're gonna sit around and watch football, or we're gonna sit around and we're gonna play board games, or we're gonna go bowling. It's like, no, we play D&D. Like that's my version of that. And I think there are a lot of
Right.
people who have games like that which work, but that's because those people have all agreed like this is our committed time to do this. And it's like it's the same as joining a league or taking a class or something. I similarly, by the way, Vixie, I actually had a
Mhm.
game that I left not because I wasn't invested in the story, because I thought it was an interesting story, but because we just kept delaying games, and then we would finally play, and we'd only play for like an hour and a half, and then like 6 months would go by and we wouldn't play again. And after a while I go, guys, I don't know what's happening in this story anymore, and I don't care about it anymore, so I'm not gonna
Yep.
play anymore. Like, find somebody else if you want to have somebody who can be doing all that. But I I don't think that like I can be part, because I can't feel invested, because it's so much time in between what's happening. I don't remember what happened last time. I don't want to pick up in the middle of a fight that we stopped playing 6 months ago. I don't want to do that. But
Right.
yeah,
And
so
I
one thing that Mike, sorry.
No, I was just gonna say that's like my only thought on that was that's why knowing how much time you can commit to is really important.
Yes.
Because what it might have made a difference there is weekly, bi-weekly, or monthly, like choosing your time, because it might be easier for you to plan for like one day off a month versus a weekly, like 4 hours that you're losing during the week or whatever. But
Yeah.
yeah, that was all I had to say.
Something Mike Fernando said in chat that I think is actually interesting, where the second suggestion was have a B game that has a different GM that is set up to kind of run as like an alternate to the main campaign. And that way, if this is for home games more than APs, obviously, but if you have a time when everybody but the normal GM can make it and you still want to play, you guys can just play the B game, and like you're still getting your like RPG itch scratch, but you might not be continuing on with the main campaign this week, but you're still like all kind of, and that kind of maybe gets everybody but the person who has to miss it still in the habit of like, oh, this is gaming time, so we're going to stick with it. Because it does feel like once one person falls off and you cancel a game, next thing you know, the next game falls off and somebody cancels, the next game falls off and somebody cancels. So
Right.
I know that even for my podcast, which is an actual play podcast, but we have a day this month where we're kind of in between seasons a little bit, so we can get away with this. But we already did like a short mini campaign as like a season break, and then we're gonna have one more recording session before we come back for our main season, where one person can't make it because she's working a seasonal holiday job. And so I
Mhm.
was like, you know what? I'm just gonna run The Witch is Dead. It's gonna be a really easy, low prep game, and so we're gonna get a fun like session of role play in. We're gonna record it. We're gonna put it out, but it's not gonna be core canon to our main series.
Right. And I
That's
think
a
that's okay.
fantastic choice.
I know.
Go
I
ahead.
agree.
Um, uh, Having one-shot games in your back pocket is such a lifesaver for maintaining the cohesion of a group, even if scheduling gets kind of funky. Um, that's why like having um, For the Queen or The Witch is Dead or Honey Heist or all of those different like one-page games where you can just pick it up, have a good time. It really it's good for morale and it's good for staying connected to your group. Um, because yeah, when you have those 6-month gaps between main campaign sessions, uh, you may not care and you may not be interested with hanging out with the people if it's been like, well, that was like 6 months ago. Do I even like these people still?
Yeah. Or you had the opposite, like you like them, but now you want to catch up because it's been 6 months since you saw them, and you're not going to play anymore because you're just going to chat
Yep.
about stuff. So
Mhm.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
yeah,
Oh, I was gonna say that with regards to that as well, you want to be careful of not if it becomes all one shots all the time. Do you want that? So you need to have a conversation with your regular game master. But like, can you
yeah,
continue to do this? But I've also done like I have a great example of something like this where I run a game of Good Soup, I've been running it on a. This is not an AP. This is just a private game as part of an indie game group that I'm a part of, and the the first I'm playing with a very different group of players than I started with, but the game itself allows you the narrative freedom to basically replace characters. Essentially, because the premise is you're all animal friends trying to make a pot of soup for a person who is in desperate need of the soup to heal an ailment of some kind. Um, that said, each of the way that it narratively allows you to basically drop these characters off to make the soup. So you have a group of characters that are making the soup, and then you can have a different group of characters going to get the ingredient, which is usually what each session is about. So it works almost like it's like a mini West Marches, but it's like very baby and far less complicated because the goal is much clearer. There's no nebulous side stories that divert you from the goal. You're literally trying to get an ingredient for the soup. And like the adventure is the friends you make along the way and all that jazz. But
Yeah.
like it works out nicely because it allows different people to join the game and it allows the players who are available to play the game. The only person that needs to be consistent is me, the GM, which I do my best to be. But because each segment of Good Soup is so self-contained, I just did PAX Unplugged, so I actually had to miss a meeting, and we're actually going to play this weekend. It's easy for me to catch up, and easy for my players to hop in because it's just a matter of like hopping in and finding the next ingredient. The other ingredient's been found, so it's been blended into the soup already, right? So stuff like that, like finding if you're playing a simple game like that, you can look for little narrative reasons as
Yeah.
well.
Yeah. Yeah.
For that.
Sorry.
No,
Another
that's it.
another game that's very similar to that is Goblin Errands, because like Goblin Errands, like each quest is very simple and it's like a thing you're doing, but there's
Mm-hmm.
also like a goblin community that's like kind of like the main, and so you could just be like, this is a different goblin from this community who's helping us with this errand today. I think next time, I think Vixie, you and I were on the show together last time. We talked about like having a
Mm-hmm.
city based setting for a game as opposed to traveling
Oh
adventurers,
yeah.
and I
Yep.
think a
Yep.
city based setting or a core base kind of setting of a more complicated game of D&D or a different game,
Mhm.
can also, of a Cthulhu or whatever, a place where like you have characters who may have obligations to their time that might not be always adventuring. So if you have a group, let's say you have 10 people in your gaming group and your
Mhm.
GM has a set time that we play. Like once we have a quorum, that's when we talked about that in the chat a little bit and on here about like once you have a quorum of people, we know we're going to play at this time. So let's say we get those 5 people that are available, first come first serve. Now we have 5 people at the
Mhm.
table. Those 5 people in the story, those are the characters that are involved in whatever caper or quest is happening this week. It doesn't mean that like nobody's in the game ever again. It just means that those characters aren't available at the time when whatever's happening is happening. And that's a good way. You can do it with like a school setting of like, oh, some kids are at basketball practice, but the rest of us are all
Mhm.
burnouts behind the gym, and so we found this mystery. That kind of thing can happen if you're doing like a kids on bikes or whatever. So
For
I think
sure.
there's like a lot of ways, regardless of how simple or complicated the system is, there are ways you can create a setting that allows people to dip in and out without like losing your consistent scheduling.
For sure. And also, it's like with as a GM who has had players like need to drop off because of scheduling issues, if you have the majority of players play anyway,
Hmm.
and the running theme with my Pirates of Dark Water game is when in doubt, knock them out. Because every time they can't make a game, I literally knock their character out and just kind of table them for the rest of the session. And I'm just like, they fill you in. Your character was unconscious the last session. It's fine.
Yeah.
like um, but it's you can do stuff like that. There's things that you can do as the GM to if you are like if you're worried about NPCing characters or someone feels very strongly about not having their character NPC, they're knocked out. Oh no. You can figure out what they're going to do after and their reactions after, and then this way this also gets you out of the whole because we have some horror stories where like characters were killed but the person who was playing them wasn't present. That's another big reason why I do that because it's like no, they were unconscious and safe, and now you can if you want to go walk off into death, then you can make that choice. You know, but yeah, so there are ways around it. I think the probably the hardest thing to work around is if the GM is physically not present,
Yeah.
and that's probably like I would say the biggest challenge in scheduling. The other thing I noticed too, I think it was also Mike mentioned time zones. scheduling around time zones is such a nightmare. Because you have EST, PST, MST. I work with people EST, PST, MST. I think at one point I was in a charity game with someone from Ireland, and it was 1 or 2 a.m. in the morning for them when the game was ran. So being mindful of all of that can be kind of rough.
Yeah. But if you sign up for a
I
game
will-
that's happening at 1 or 2 in the morning for you, you know what you're signing up for. I mean, yeah. Sorry, Rose.
And I'll counter with saying,
Mhm.
actually, time zones are amazing, because I work a weird schedule where I have a weekday off,
Okay.
and so I have just nothing going on in the middle of the day, and everyone else is working their jobs and can't play games that time, which is a perfect time to get people in Europe online.
Oh.
And so I Steffi in Scotland, we've played so many games because I get the middle of the day available and we're able to game together. Um and so it's if you cast a wide enough net, the disadvantages can become advantages. I also believe that like sometimes it's a fantastic idea to just say make friends who are or like ask a bunch of people if they're available on a particular day and then become friends with them.
Yeah.
Because I have found a lot of groups where it's like, oh no, D&D is the friend group, and the friend group is a sample size of 4 to 5 people, and those 4 to 5 people are never going to have overlapping schedules. It never happens.
Yeah.
So starting with who is scheduled to have a Thursday off, we're going to play every Thursday night. Stuff like that. Um, I also I recognize that I'm very lucky that I have access to very large local role-playing game groups and also a huge online game group, and multiple communities that are out there. Happy
But
Jacks,
I want to
Magpie
interrupt and say
Games.
that if you are a Happy Jacks fan and you're in the Happy Jacks Discord, you also have access to a very large and friendly online gaming group. So if you're
Yes,
listening to
that's
this
true.
show,
Yes.
happyjacks.org/discord is a place you can go to be part of what Rose is talking about. Sorry, Rose, continue. I just that
Yay!
was important.
Yes. Yes. happyjacks.org/discord is the place to be. Yeah, it's fantastic. There's but yeah, there's a lot of quality online communities that I would say are akin to Happy Jacks. Obviously none as good, but like some get close.
Cat butt. Sorry, we have a
But
cat butt cameo. Sorry.
Yes. This dude really wanted to be part of the bit. My cat has entered the chat.
It's like Toothless just
I
flew
just
into the island of
Yes.
Berg.
I love the just like aiming the eyes at the camera.
Yeah.
It's just void and then
Yes.
suddenly eyeballs.
Eyeballs.
Yeah. Appearing out of
Uh.
the green screen. Yeah.
Yes.
All right. Any final thoughts on gaming scheduling before we move on to the next email? I can't believe how much this was like one of the shortest emails I've ever seen on this show, but we managed to find a lot to say about it anyway.
We
Don't be
did.
afraid to cast a wide net and make new friends.
Yeah.
Go with what days work for you and then find people who can fill that.
Yeah.
You'll meet new people, make new friends, get to know people better than you thought you would.
Yep.
Yeah.
And I think communication and compromise is important here as well.
Yeah.
Obviously don't do anything that's detrimental to you, but be open to like feedback from the people you want to play with and find help come to that decision of what works best for everyone together. So
Yeah. I don't disagree with what Rose said about the D&D group being the friend group, but I think that also, like what you're saying, a lot of times the role-playing group becomes the new friend group. I have so many like very good friends that I met
Yep.
because we were playing role-playing games together and we clicked and we bonded, and that's why we became very good friends. So
yes.
which is it's the same reason why people sign up for like intramural sport, not intramural, but like sports leagues and stuff like that, like because they want to get out and meet new people and bond with people, and that's why you do it. So excellent. All right, let's move on to our next email. I think Vixie, you're going to take this one to kick off.
Yes, I am. Okay, so mailbag number 2. It is a missive on the merits of generic systems. Ahoy, Captain Kimmy and the Happy Jacks crew. I just wrote in asking how to reduce a GM workload. There's one approach that works for me that I figured could use its own missive, especially because it contradicts good advice that y'all give. Kind of. We'll see. Okay. The crew has often said something along the lines of find a game that does what you want, or for whatever game you want to play, there's a game that does exactly that. Oh boy. Settling in here. Or however y'all phrase it. What am I going to do? Look up a quote? Whereas generic / universal systems tend to make any game you play with them taste like that system. And I agree. That's generally true. But here's the thing. I'm tired. I don't have the energy to learn a new gourmet recipe every time I want a meal. Sometimes I just take whatever I have in my fridge and add my favorite hot sauce. And I really like my favorite hot sauce. I'm reminded of that little old lady commercial where she's like, I put that shit on everything. And it's Frank's Red Hot.
Yeah.
Similarly, there are some generic systems I love. GURPS, Fate, and Wild Talents are historic favorites. But my go to now is Cortex Prime. For any game concept I have, I can get a Cortex game going in about 15 minutes. When I'm low on discretionary brain power, the most accessible way for me to go from game concept to gameplay is to use a generic system I know and like. Plus, they've all got optional rules to change the feel of the game. So reusing it gives me a chance to play with new parts of the system. These options also make it easy to adjust the game mid-campaign if something isn't working. Don't get me wrong, I absolutely enjoy specific systems, and I've got quite the collection I want to play someday. With another on the way, looking forward to Starscape. Yay, Starscape. But I think generic / universal systems can be a good tool to have on hand. So how do you all feel about generic systems these days? Do you have ones you prefer or avoid? When would you choose to recommend one, if ever? Happy gaming, Gurg Murg.
Gurg Murg.
Gurg Murg.
Have you noticed that nobody today has wished us a beverage or hydration in any way? I feel taken out, but so I'm gonna wish ourselves a drink because you just read a long
Heck
email.
yeah.
So
Drink.
Cheers. Oh gosh.
I think it's interesting that Gurg Murg said I have specific systems I want to play, and then references Starscape, which is a Powered by the Apocalypse game. So I mean, like, yes, it is a system, but Powered by Apocalypse is a generic system that people build other genre games around. It's a tool set anyway, but maybe not as much as Cortex or GURPS, but like it's not that far off from that.
GURPS. I was like, GURPS? I mean, I can understand Fate. Like, I was actually, when I was trying to figure out what system to run Pirates of Dark Water with, Fate was actually the top two. It was between Fate and Cypher, and I ended up going with Cypher because it had a little more of what I wanted to do in it. Because, funnily enough, the original Pirates of Dark Water TTRPG that Hanna-Barbera made had no system. So yeah, they just gave you a bunch of stats and were like, and I'm like, I feel like there should be. Okay, thanks. But yeah, so like it's funny because that's immediately what I thought of because I had to like figure out how are we gonna play this? I want to play this. What systems are gonna do what I want to do? And I went through a bunch of systems, not GURPS, but that's because I'm not a GURPS person. But it came down to Fate because I thought Fate would be a good fit for the nature of the cartoon, and Cypher because Cypher also gave you like a nice variety, but within a more kind of structured framework in comparison to Fate. And at the end of the day, I was like, I feel like Cypher is going to give us the kind of narrative that I'm looking for, like to create with this game in this space versus Fate, which I feel like would create a little bit more chaos and a little more chaos than I really want in the kind of game that I was thinking of playing. So I think that's what we mean when we say find a system that's going to do what you want. Like this, and even then, we still have a lot of homebrew stuff that goes into the system. So, like, the idea of sticking with a rule set is funny to me because I have so often broken them. Like, today, I literally broke one and was like, oh, this is going to be a whole Reddit thread. So, Yeah, the like generic rule systems are great, but the existing rule systems are just they're guidelines. They're not set in stone. You know, as long as you don't do anything so catastrophically game breaking that it's not the game anymore, to me, um, you know, that's kind of my where I'm coming from on that.
Rose, any thoughts on that?
I think Gurg Murg makes a really fantastic point where, like, if you enjoy a generic system enough, like if it scratches your brain properly, um, the advantages to it are huge. Whether that's GURPS or Savage Worlds or Wild Talents or Fate or Cortex or Cipher, if you find one that matches how your brain works, that's an incredibly useful tool to have. And being able to, yeah, just pick up, come up with a game concept and go to running a game. The only system I have like that for me is Masks because my brain just runs on comic books.
Hmm.
Um, and so I think any system that is that comfortable for you is going to be huge. I think it really comes down to um, whether or not you can find one that not just the flavor but the mechanical shape of it um, fits well with you. Like I know people who are like, why would I run any game in a particular system when I can just run it in Fate? Or uh, shout out to everyone in the Happy Jacks Discord, Savage Worlds.
Yeah.
Um, and I say, yeah, go for it. Like if you have a play group that vibes with it, and if it's what works for you, it's what works for you. Go for it.
Yeah,
Have fun.
Hmm.
Go forth and conquer.
yeah. I tend to be less a fan of generic systems myself, but again, I don't. That's because that doesn't work for me the same way it might work for somebody else, and so I'm never going to be like, no, this is the wrong way to do it, because like, no, the way that works for you is what works for you. Because I'm reading this thing and I'm this email from Gurg Murg, and I'm thinking like, yeah, I totally understand the desire to take leftovers and add your favorite hot sauce and just enjoy your hot sauce because that hot sauce works for you. And yes, pour the Frank's Red Hot on stuff. But sometimes what I want is not the thing that can be changed with just a little hot sauce or not. Like sometimes, like I don't know if a generic system is going to properly reflect the aspects of a genre that I really want to see in a role playing game. And so for me, it's like I don't like my analogy is like sometimes I really want a recipe that is designed to be the recipe for the thing that I'm craving. And so I want to find the good, easy to follow recipe that will allow me to make the meal I'm craving, as opposed to trying to doctor up a thing in my fridge with leftovers that makes me that scratches the itch of that recipe, if that makes sense. And as someone who
Right.
does that quite a bit in real life, I love throwing whatever shit I have in the fridge together and making a meal out of it. But sometimes I might specifically want like a Thanksgiving leftover sandwich. So like I have to make sure I have stuffing, and I have to make sure I have cranberry sauce, and I have to make sure, so like I don't want to just be like, I've got turkey and I'll put some jam on it. Like I want it to taste like what I want it to taste like. So for me it's like I don't know if I think that this method is more or less work for the GM. The way it's been presented as like GMs are busy and we don't have time to find the right game all the time. But for me, it's like, is it more or less time consuming to kit bash the game to fit the genre that you want? I mean, it sounds like it is for Gurg Murg. Gurg Murg says that they can get a Cortex game going in about 15 minutes. So Gurg Murg knows Cortex so well inside and out that they can just flip on whatever game they're looking for. I would probably spend way too much time going, oh, okay, how do I recreate Jedi powers in this game, or how do I accurately convey the Doctor in the TARDIS with this system? And so for me, it's
Hmm.
like knowing that there are systems that do a better job of reflecting that thing for me. I feel like it's less work for me just to go, cool, here's this game now. But I think both have merit.
I think it really comes down to what feels like work for you. is learning a system work for you, or is kit bashing a system work for you? If one of those isn't, like if one of those is just like, oh, I love kit bashing systems, then of course that's gonna be a really good flow for you, and that's gonna see a lot of success. Um, I at first thought that I didn't like learning new systems. And it turns out I don't like learning D&D. Um, that's the actual thing. Because D&D sets this expectation for what learning a system will be that is super, super high. It's 3 books, it's a lot of money to buy all of them, it's a lot of time to read through all of them, and you're not going to learn everything on the first read through, and you're certainly not going to learn it right. And so that's what I thought all systems were like for the longest time. And eventually I learned that, oh, I actually, if I'm not looking for things with a rules density akin to D&D, I can actually learn systems really easily.
Mhm.
It's actually the kit bashing that that takes a lot more time for me. I don't love kit bashing systems because it I am not a particularly adept game designer. So trying to make things that are balanced and trying to make sure things that are evocative and flavorful in game mechanics, I leave that to the professionals.
Yeah, same.
Fair.
I'm
That's
great at
absolutely
writing
fair.
flavor. I'm not good at writing mechanics. Yeah.
Yeah.
I I think for me the big thing is like with systems is crunch. Very crunchy systems I find difficult to learn, not because they are actually genuinely difficult, but because I need more time
Hmm.
than usually what I have to learn them. So it's nothing like I don't have problems with like GURPS or Pathfinder or any of these games that have high crunch levels. It's just that I know that I'm going to be spending quite some time with the rules before I feel like I'm ready to play. So I either need a good GM who's willing to like let me mess up at the table or like while I'm like figuring out mechanics or to sit with the book for like a few weeks to learn it. But yeah, and I mean, I don't hate kit bashing. Sometimes it's necessary for example, if the TTRPG you're trying to run has no system. Uh, Other times, like what I actually really enjoy playing are games that like um that are founded in stuff that I already know, so I can just jump right in.
Mm.
So I think a lot about PBTA games. So like Starscape is a PBTA game, Virgins and Vixens is a PBTA game. A lot of there are a lot of games that are like that. Thirsty Sword Lesbians is another one because I think and Masks, easy to pick up, easy to figure out like what you're doing, how you're doing it. Versus some of these crunchier games, and they all do very specific things. Like they like what I like about the PBTA games specifically is that they are very much like, here is what you can do. These are the things. Pick what you can do from the list, and you are done. So you don't actually have to. You can if you want to make up your own stuff. There's no rule against that. But like, if you're just like, I want to play a game, I don't want to think about what I'm making. Tick, 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 tick. You're done. You know, these are the things that you want to use, and then like you can add as much or as little flavor as you want to those selections. And I appreciate that because to me, those kinds of games they come together very quickly. And then you have other simpler games like Honey Heist where it's literally like roll a d6 for everything. Done. Like, let's go, you know? So there are games for me that that are system specific that I really enjoy that are like that. And then again, comes back to I'm familiar with Blades in the Dark. I'm familiar with PBT. I'm familiar with Cypher. I can kit bash because of my familiarity with the systems, you know. So I think when it comes to kit bashing versus, finding the right game or the game that you are looking for, um, I think at the end of the day for me is what's the story that I want to tell and what's the best way to tell it, with this table. Because teach it like do it because even if you're familiar with the system, if you have new people to the system, so let's say someone's never played with Into the Odd or PBTA or any of these other systems, you now have to teach that person at your table. So that is also something to keep in mind as well, that you're going to need the capacity to do that during the game, you know. Um, but yeah, so my point with that is really they kind of it all to me it feels like it's kind of the same. One is much more focused on like the and catered to the story and what the story is in canon, shall we say, since these are like published events. And one is more catered to the kind of narrative that you want to tell with your table. We want to tell a superhero story, but let's do it using Cypher. But versus let's tell a superhero story, but with masks, which is made for that scenario.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
It's interesting, Rose, kind of what you said about like you don't like learning D&D specifically, which doesn't mean you don't like learning other systems. I think learning other systems is what cracked my ability to love learning D&D, because listening to Vixie talk about like crunch especially, like I don't love a lot of crunch, which is weird since I am a big D&D nerd, but what I learned is I don't mind crunch if anything crunchy makes sense to me as to like why it works in the game or not. And then anything that doesn't make sense to me crunch wise, I just chuck it out and don't worry about it. And I think that's where like PBT, like I've never once as a GM running D&D ever dealt with encumbrance rules. I've never dealt with like I did when we were doing Tomb of Annihilation. I did deal with like making sure they had enough rations in the jungle and stuff like that. But I also went out of my way to make sure they had enough rations in the jungle so that it never became an issue while we were playing. So that kind of thing would happen quite a bit. But or if it did, I would make it like intentional so they had to then find rations as the story, as opposed to like you woke up this morning and you're all starving and now you're all exhausted, like like that kind of thing. But I feel like now what I do with almost any system is I read until something makes no sense to me, and then I just kind of stop paying attention at that point. And I think that Powered by the Hot Clubs games especially really helped me to do that, and like other rules light games of being like I will run. And so the problem is it makes it hard to teach sometimes because I won't learn rules that then someone's like, hey, wait a minute, there's a rule here you didn't tell us about. And I'm like, I was seeing if you were paying attention, like that kind of thing. Like there's so many new versions of rules in D&D 2024 versus 2014 that I'm like, I just tell my players like, y'all, there's a lot of rules. I haven't read these books cover to cover, memorize them. So if I get something wrong, I'm just going to make a ruling in the moment and we're going to play forward. If I get something wrong in a way that messes up your enjoyment of the game, tell me and I will fix it and we'll solve it and we'll move forward. But like otherwise, let's just keep playing and tell the story we're going to tell. And I think like that mentality to D&D and other crunchy games comes from having tried a few different systems and like learning like, yeah, sometimes there's things in games that work and things that don't. Sometimes I'll make up my own rules because I think the game's rule as written is dumb and I don't want to do it, and so I will make my own version instead. So I think that's something that I've learned a lot from kit bashing other games and stuff like that. But overall, I think that I still tend to like when like I said, I want a rule to make sense. So if a rule is well written to cover the thing that I'm like, it took me so long in D&D to understand why spell slots worked and how they understand so like when I was first playing I was like, why do I have this level but this level of magic, and like what does this mean, spell slots? And when someone finally was like, that's just how much like core, think of it like how much mana you have to spend on spells that day and you've used up that well or whatever, then I was like, now I get it. That's cool. Like, 'cause sometimes there's days where like you might have the energy to accomplish one major task, but you may have been like, you may be like fucking out of energy for all these minor tasks that you would have had in front of you. And as an ADHD person, I can totally understand that. Some days I can drive to the store and buy something complicated, but I can't be bothered to make my own goddamn coffee. Are you kidding me? I have to stop and buy coffee because I can't be bothered to get a filter out and pour water into a carafe and then put coffee grounds into it. That's too much work. So like that's the kind of thing that I think like an example of a rule that for a long time I was like, this is dumb, I'm not going to learn it. And then when I finally understood it, I'm like, this is great, I get this totally. And I think that I would have a hard time obviously like trying to run D&D for any sort of story that has no magic, because even like most of the mundane characters in D&D, magic is involved in some way. So like unless you want to sit down and be like, okay, this is a high tech, like I've seen like reskins of 5th edition rules that replace magic with high technology stuff. But when I read through those, it's always like, okay, so you just renamed a spell, but you're still casting a spell. Like, that's fine. Whereas, like, there are some systems where I think I would have a hard time using a system that works both in a very, very magical world, but also a world that has no magic at all. And I feel like, okay, so what are your rule systems for these two different scenarios and how are they compatible? Because one totally changes the other. But that's probably also my own head getting in the way of being like, no, the rules don't make sense, so I don't want to learn it. Like, so, yeah.
Yeah.
Cool. Do we have any more thoughts on this, or we move on to the doozy of a final email that we've got? All right. So this is a new email. Yeah, this is not an archive email because Kimmy is sick and doesn't want to read to the archive today. And I'm on the show, and so we need one really long email. That is what's written in the document. So this is a horror story email. And as we said at top, it does involve vampire children. So I'm just going to put a trigger warning out there if that veers towards something that you might have a squib against. So I will kick it off. This is a very long email, so we are probably, once I start getting a little scratchy in my voice, I think we'll have to hand it off to somebody else at some point because my wine glass is empty. So,
Oh, no.
all right. Yeah.
Wine,
all right.
notably great for the throat.
Yeah, of course. Yeah. Dear Happy Jacks, I have an RPG horror story to share that's also a bit of an RPG success story. The success part is how safety tools were able to keep the players in a game that was just not going well. This occurred at a Games on Demand event at PAX Unplugged 2024, which was just 2 days ago as I write this. So sorry that it's been in the queue for this long, but they were waiting for me to come back, I guess. I got into a 4-hour session of Monster of the Week, a game I know and love. I've both played and GM'd a lot of this game. For those unfamiliar, Monster of the Week is a PBTA game about monster hunting, and it is directly inspired by such TV shows as Buffy the Vampire Slayer, The X-Files, and Supernatural. The game started out just fine. The GM gave a short safety talk, mentioned the X card, and then asked us for lines and veils. We laid out most of the standard ones, including harm to children. The GM then gave us the base premise. We were at a mall about 2 weeks before Christmas, and we would not know each other before some weird events brings us together. Fine. We spent the next half hour choosing playbooks and playbook moves and coming up with little backstory. Then we spent another half hour figuring out what stores were at the mall. The GM then had each of us tell a little short scene of what we were doing in the mall. This part was pretty fun, and then the adventure started. Out of the gate, it was pretty clear that the GM just didn't understand how a PBTA game was supposed to be played. They were regularly calling for us to roll weird or tough without telling us why. 2 other PBTA veteran players and I tried to clarify by asking, what move have we triggered a few times, but the GM would just told us to roll the stat and they'd tell us what has happened, or what was happened. I got it. That's what it says, but I think what had happened, is that the word? All right.
Yeah, I think I get it. I see what you're trying to put down.
I've been in PBTA con games where the GM was calling for skill checks instead of moves before. I usually just chalk that up to D&D syndrome, where the GM basically tries to run PBTA like it's D&D with a different dice mechanic. I can roll with it if I'm otherwise having fun, so I gave the GM the benefit of the doubt and kept playing. And then our characters found the first body, neck-bitten and exsanguinated. Obviously a vampire to veteran monster hunters like ourselves. Veteran monster hunters like ourselves. That typo was my that's all from my throat. That's not from the written text. The actual writer wrote Monster Hunters. But the bite marks seemed oddly small and close together. Not long after that, we finally encountered the monsters we were supposed to fight, a coven of child vampires. We all exchanged glances and decided to press on a little to see if these were actually child vampires or something else. And after the PCs captured one, it was pretty clear that it was indeed a child of about 11 who'd been turned into a vampire. That crossed an established line. I'll do this next paragraph, then I'm going to hand it off to somebody else. So somebody be on deck and ready to go. All right.
Ready.
A player tapped the X card. The GM seemed surprised. We said that we lined up harm to children, and the fact that there were children who'd been turned into vampires meant that children had been harmed. The GM said they didn't remember us setting that line. Well, okay, first issue right there. The players all agreed that we had. I was there. We had. And also, it should be written down. All right. And even if we hadn't, anyone can always add new lines and veils if they come up in play.
That's the point of the X card. Sorry.
Yes, I agree. which is why it was there. Yeah. When we started then offering script change suggestions about what to change so we could keep going. Maybe just make them regular vampires and not child vampires from the start. Maybe make them be vampires that are using some kind of glamour to make themselves look like children to lower a victim's guards. Maybe they're not vampires, but rather some kind of shape-shifting monster that's taking the form of children. But the GM didn't really respond to our suggestions. They seemed to be kind of shutting down. The only counter they gave was, there are ways you can defeat them without killing them, but that didn't address the fundamental question. Okay, Vixie, I'll hand it off to you.
I gotcha. All right. After sitting there in silence for a minute or two, waiting for the GM to say something, another player stood up and said they weren't really vibing with this game and that he was going to open door from the game. I had been on the cusp of doing the same, and I resigned as well. Sorry, I'm allergic
Bless
to this
you.
entire email.
Yeah.
Clearly. And when, thank you. And then the other 4 players did too, or rather, the behavior that's being described in this email. And then the other 4 players did too. All 6 players open doored. We found each other in the hall outside the game room and had a little debrief among us to make sure we were all okay and on the same page. We also agreed to speak with the Games on Demand coordinator to let them know what had happened, and then saw the GM already talking with them. We waited a few minutes. They seemed to be talking a while. Some players decided to go get lunch and come back. I offered to run a little pickup RPG session, and some of the others took me up on that. An hour later, after our pickup game was over, we went back to talk to the GOD organizer. The organizer heard us out and complimented us for having the bravery to invoke safety tools, advocate for ourselves about how to make things better, and to walk away from a game we were not enjoying. They then told us that they had spoken with the GM and was very glad to hear the player's perspective. They said the GM had told them that we weren't asking the right questions and they couldn't make the changes we'd asked because of the plot of the mystery they'd written. The coordinator said, I'm sorry, I'm already twitching. The GM in the story is making me twitch. The
By the way,
coordinator
funny,
said,
we learned this in the chat, by the way, that Mike in the chat is who wrote this email. We just learned that as we were reading it.
The coordinator said that they thought that, imagine that. The coordinator said that they thought the GM had perhaps too much emotional investment in the scenario they'd written, and that made it hard for them to adjust. Apparently, the scenario was supposed to be a riff on Peter Pan and the Lost Boys of Neverland, and the GM felt that they couldn't make them anything other than child vampires without having to rewrite the whole adventure from the ground up, and they couldn't really do that on the fly. And the coordinator agreed with us. If there's a line on harm to children and the adventure is about trying to cure child vampires of vampirism, that's crossing the line because the existence of child vampires at all has established that children were harmed. And the coordinator reiterated that we had done exactly the right thing by walking away from a game that we were not having fun with. The coordinator said that they'd reach out to the GM in a few days after the GM had a chance to cool down a bit, and that seemed like a good strategy. Rose, do you want to take this one? Because I feel like I'm going to sneeze again.
Lessons learned, number 1. It's very important to set content warnings on a game pitch if you're going to include a potentially problematic element that can't be reasonably lined. And you really need to reiterate those warnings during the pregame safety talk before you start playing. When I'm a player, number 2, when I'm a player in any future horror or horror-adjacent games, I'm going to be sure to add undead children to the lines list. In conclusion, this game was an example of using safety tools in a concrete way to try and fix a game on the fly, and barring that, to feel safe to resign from a game that you're not enjoying. Safety tools won't necessarily salvage a game going off the rails, but they can make you feel better about walking away, because life is too short to play games that aren't fun. Mike from New York State.
Oh, it's Mike! Wow, that's so
Thanks,
wild
Mike.
that Mike in chat. Yeah, I think like content warnings is the biggest problem that was missing here. I mean, a lot of the big problems, but like, yes, if this is a story that you have written and you know you're going to tell it, and you get people starting to talk at your game and their line is against like harm to children, a line does not mean unless you have a really cool thing happening. Like, no, a line means like this is a problem for me, and we can talk about it, and I feel like if this GM had even said up front that like, hey, this game involves like child monsters, like, is that going to be something you can handle? People would know to leave the table at that point, as opposed to springing it on them later, which has also happened to me. I've had a game where I've had like, I also am very squippy about child harm, and I've had a game where we got to the end and the monster was like a demon taking the form of a child, and I'm like, I don't want to fight the demon child because I already said I have a problem with harm to children, and I don't. If it's like someone I know and trust, and like I know that I feel safe in the space, I will do that. But I didn't know this GM at all, and I'm like, no, this is not okay. I had a thing about this. Like, what are we talking about? Like,
the fact that like this also too, the scenario you wrote in your head, right? Not only should this GM have preface, like I take safety so seriously, like safety, this is I would this GM drove me nuts. The reading about this GM drove me nuts.
yes,
I was just like, oh my God, why did you do everything wrong? But like I also have no mercy. I'm literally ruthless. I'm like, no, why are you putting these players at risk like this? But like not only did they like not talk about content warnings, when the players talked about lines and veils, it was there. Like they said, the line was no harm to children. At that point, wouldn't it occur to you to ask the question of, well, this game is going to feature child vampires. Are we okay with this? That would be like, if it's intrinsic to your story, ask that question. And if they are not okay with it, you're going to have to change that element of the story. And this is a thing that I've seen with a lot of GMs where they get so married to a particular thing in the story that it becomes like a fixed thing that can't be changed.
A
And I'm like,
canon
no.
event.
Yeah, like well, I feel like a fixed point in time is a bit different because you're like there's a such thing as like having story beats in a game that you want them to do so that they can do the thing that like essentially do the thing that you're trying to get them to do in the story. But that like stuff like if it's a child vampire, it's like all of the suggestions the players made were absolutely valid and still were able, like that still got that made the GM happy because he was still able to use that, but it was no longer crossing the line. And the GM was still like, no, I needed to be vampire kids. And I'm like, no, you don't. You don't have to for this particular thing. But yeah, like there's, to me, that like the players did everything right. Because on top of that, not only were they clear about the line that was stated, it was also X-carded. They used every tool that they had to communicate to the GM that they weren't comfortable with the situation, and the GM ignored all of that in service to the narrative in their mind. Not okay. That should never be the case. Like, always listen to your players, and if something has to be retconned or changed, do it. At the end of the day, everybody's trying to have fun, and I don't to me, it's just like, oh, well, why is that a big deal for you?
Especially for the GM to then be heated and need to be given time to cool down from their mistake. And like, it's such a wild, like, they put these people in a situation that they felt emotionally like pushed by, and then the GM's like, I'm the victim here because I had to change my story. It's just it's like this is not the kind of game that you run for strangers at a con who have given you lines and veils that say opposing point of this. Like, this is a game like Mike pointed out in the chat that if child vampires was in the game pitch, Mike wouldn't have played the game. And like I understand a GM not wanting to give away the reveal of what the monster is in Monster of the Week, which is a game that is designed around learning the mystery and solving it, although it doesn't sound like the GM was playing it that way anyway. But at the same time, it's like, not everything, like, I would rather spoil a surprise than make somebody uncomfortable at my table. That's how I feel about it.
Yeah.
And like I mentioning, like, Mike saying if this had been in part of a document Mike wouldn't have played, like, I hate harm to children, but I also love vampires. And I will tell you that opening weekend of Abigail the Vampire movie, I went and saw it because I knew going in that it's a wild horror movie about a little girl ballerina vampire, and that was part of like that was what was on the tin. And so I knew what I was getting into when I saw it, and I quite enjoyed this violent, bloody movie about a little girl vampire. But that's because I knew when I was going in, so I was able to give myself that like safety of like, you know what you're getting into. It's going to be
Right,
a wild, yeah.
you're making the choice to look into this. And I also think too, like the fact that the GM then turned around and tried to gaslight with like, oh, I don't remember that being in the lines and veils. It's like, no, 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 no. Like you're if someone tells you something is a line, your job is to believe them. That is it.
Yes.
Whether they're telling the truth or not, your job is to believe them. And especially because this was in games on demand too. Like this is it's not I would say like games on demand is run by people who just want to run games, right? It's not necessarily a professional setting like the TTI libraries or the Access Lounge, but like you're as a GM, you should be aware that you're playing with strangers, people who've never played with you before, who aren't familiar with your GMing style. It's your responsibility as a GM, if you are taking on this role, to prioritize you and your players' safety. I do not understand why someone would go this far in pushing their players to the point of leaving the table, because that's the thing. The players left the table after doing everything they possibly could to make the game work, and the
Yeah.
GM was still like, well, it's their fault. No, it's not. It's your fault because you didn't take them seriously when they told you they were not okay with this particular situation, you know.
Yeah, and to say that I forgot that it was in there. How do you forget a thing that everybody at the table put in their lines and veils? How do you forget a line and veil that is in direct conflict with the story you're planning on telling? Like, there's just no way. That is not a forget. That I don't know this person, but this person's a liar. This person lied. They thought that no, they won't care if it's vampires. They'll see how good my story is, and it won't affect them or whatever. But like, no, and like Mike says in the chat, it's a living document, and people
Right.
in the moment are allowed to say, hey, X, I don't like this right now. Like, this is a thing
Right.
that I did not know. I had last time I was at Strategicon, or I guess it was the previous time, it was one last year, I played in a Thirsty Sword Lesbians game, and in the first 10 minutes of the game, the GM and the players were all like queer. Most of us were trans or of some or at least like very like gender fluid and that kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
But and the GM, as far as I know, in their presentation was a cis white man. I don't know if straight or queer. I'm not gonna touch that because I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
In the first 10 minutes, announced that my character had been dead named by didn't actually dead like said. She dead names you is how we described it, and I was like, okay, well, I crash, and like another player goes, I crash, not the character, I crash, because like she couldn't believe that suddenly in this game, this is already being happening at the very beginning of the game. Like, we're kicking off the game with transphobia in the game when like we had clearly on our lines and veils not to have that. But
Yeah, like ooh, just no. Like the everything about what that GM did was no, because again, the players like they're and this is with why I put lines and veils in writing always, because I know myself, and I know like sometimes if you have like if you're neurodivergent, you might need a visual representation of the thing in front of you so that because it might literally just leave your brain. You might just be like, oh, whoops, whatever, and you have something you can look down at and say, yes, okay, we did this. I have a snapshot. Or in my case, I use it as a reference point and keep looking at it to remind myself of where the lines and veils are. And I'm like, and again, always very clearly state, what's in the game, this is what this game is going to feature. And if someone uses the X card, they can use the X card for literally anything. If it's a name that bothers them, they can X card that. If it's literally like if it's something that's like a lot that's really deep and heavy, like the transphobia, like X card, that is what the X card is for. It is to say
yeah,
this is uncomfortable and or potentially like activating or triggering me. I do not want to go any further than this. Your job as the GM is to acknowledge that and say, okay, what can we do to make this better? Move on, no questions asked. Is there a specific thing that needs to be removed here? Which of these things, what can we do to keep the game fun and not make it a painful experience? And it sounds like this GM just refused to take accountability. for what happened. Because to have everyone at your table open door, that says something. And it's not good.
And to have them open door after making multiple efforts to fix the problem. Like nobody owes you the effort to fix your triggering game. So the fact that these people went out of their way to try to fix it, and then you still refuse to work with them on it, and then they open doored. And now it sounds like from Mike in the chat is saying that later on another player was at another game with that same GM who was just playing in that game, and that GM was like complaining the whole time about players who walked out on them. And it's like, yeah, of course, because you're not listening to it. You're still not listening. Because I use the X card in my kids games that I run on the weekends and then summer camp. And one of the things that I've really had to do over and over again is really hammer home like what the X card is for, because I've had kids try to be like, oh, I'm rolling badly, I want to X card my bad rolls, or like these characters are doing a thing in game that my character doesn't want to have happen, so I want to X card so they can't do this thing in game. And I was like, is it bothering you at a character? And they'll be like, no, I'm fine. Because like I had like a character who was like, oh, I don't want to fight these guys. And I was like, okay, there's like maybe a torture element here or whatever, so I'm gonna do the X card with them. And then like the next scene, the kid goes, I'm attacking this guy now. I'm like, hang on, you just X carded this fight. And so like it's a lot of times it'll be the kids who don't fully understand the purpose of the X card are using it as a manipulation tactic to try to like move the game. So I'm very upfront now. Like, here are examples of the X card being used that are what it's for. And the reason why I'm so strict about like making sure they understand the purpose of the X card is because I don't like to debate the X card. Like, once the X card is played, I want to go, X card is played, we're acknowledging it, and we're moving on. And so I don't want the kids to use it for things that are insincere or that aren't like, because like, in my opinion, once the X card is played, it's played, and that is the ruling at the table. So I don't want it to be like, oh, I'm trying to force this other player to not play their character how they want to play it in a way that's not disruptive to the table, to be like, because I use the X card. So it's like I have to be really careful, which is why in this case it's like, no, this was so clearly being used to play up the lines and veils, and like it's so wild that it got ignored.
I'm just when safety tools get ignored, I'm ready to fight. I'm like, okay, time to throw hands. Removes earrings, like ties up back hair. Let's go, because I take them so seriously, because it's so important to me that everyone feel safe and comfortable in the game, because a big part of TTRPGs is being able to be vulnerable at the table, and a lot of times you're exchanging this vulnerability with people you don't know, especially in situations like games on demand or any of these like settings where you're playing with a PTI or Access. The only difference is that in PTI and Access, they tend to look for professional game masters, or you're running with a company. So like I ran Wild Sea with MythWorks, and I like just it always floors me. I'm always very open. Here's what I don't do. Here are my three big lines. Here's what's in the game. Like, here, write down your lines, veils, and like anything you want to explore. It's just second nature to me, and anything that the players tell me is uncomfortable and doesn't work, I believe them. And I actually got told that. I was like, oh, this is the first time anyone ever just didn't put it in the game. And I'm like, you're supposed to believe people when they tell you something makes them uncomfortable, and you're supposed to incorporate that into your gameplay. So
my minor big frustration here is that beginning of this game, there was over an hour of time before they got into the game to play, where they did backstory and they named stores in the mall, and none of that hour of a 4-hour game session did the GM spend going, hey, what if I don't use child vampires anymore? Hey, what if I do something different with the vampire? What if I make them leprechauns? I don't know. What if I do something different that makes sense? They're leprechaun vampires now. They're shapeshifters. They're child vampires, but they were born as vampires, and they're actually like 2,000 years old or whatever, and they never got harmed because they've been living that whole. I don't know, like whatever, but like. But then you still have to have the players have to. It's just like, I like that at the end they go, well, there's other ways to solve them without hurting them. They've already been hurt. That's the point. They've already been hurt. That's the story. Like, sorry.
No, you're absolutely right, but that's what I'm saying. Like
Yeah.
the fact that they were child vampires, and the implication is that they were turned, they've already been harmed. Now you're putting the players in a position where they have to further harm them because
Yeah.
why? Like, what are we gonna call this? Like a mercy? No, no, no,
Yeah.
no. Like, absolutely not. They lit, and you like you could have easily, again, the player suggestions were great. They could have been any number of things that still got that like Peter Pan vibe without ever being children. They
Yeah.
could have been a bunch of adults that wished for eternal youth, and that's what happened,
Yes.
And
It's kick the
like,
can for Twilight Zone, right? Like right there. Yeah.
exactly. And yet, like, this is what the GM came up with. But yeah, like, just
Ugh. That's a
use your
great
safety
story,
tools,
right? That thing you
kids.
said,
Yeah.
you're an adult, you wish for eternal youth, and then the Faustian twist is you're a child vampire. So it's like, cool, you have eternal youth, but now you have to live as a child and you have to feed on blood.
Yes.
Like that is because like I love Interview with the Vampire. I love the tragedy of
Claudia.
Claudia as like
Yeah.
she's older. She's like she has this maturing brain, but she can't deal
Yeah.
with what her body is. It's fantastic. But like
She
that's
is essentially
also
a woman, but she's stuck in like this child's body,
yeah. And it's why the vampires in that story have a strict moral code about not turning children into vampires. Like, even the vampires in the Vampire Chronicles are better at dealing with safety tools than the people at this game are. Like, they will burn down all of Paris. Sorry, I just yelled loudly. I apologize for everyone's headphones. They will burn down all of Paris to deal with this X card more than this GM would here. Like, this
Yes.
GM couldn't spend the hour of game prep that he gave his players at the table to then turn around and be like, oh, I've fixed my vampire problem behind the scenes without them know. Because that's what I, as a GM, like, if I've given my players a lot of time in game to prep and like have in character things happening for themselves, I'm sitting on the side going, okay, how am I gonna fix that problem that I just noticed earlier?
Right. Like, it's like, that. But like, again, the props to the players for using their safety tools, especially the open door /
Absolutely.
open table policy.
Yes. Yes.
Because I was actually surprised the GM let them leave the table. I was half expecting to read about how the GM tried to stop them from exercising
Yeah.
that safety tool because they
Well,
were
it sounds like the
so
GOD
bad.
organizer was a big part of that. It sounds like the GOD
Yeah.
organizer was like, nope, if everyone's walking away, there's a reason for it. And like, it sounds like
Yeah.
the GOD organizer did a good job of maybe like separating the GM from the group and like kind of
Mhm.
giving them like a space. Like, I like that the people did come back and talk to the coordinator and kind of explain their side of it, which is great. But I think it's good that the GOD person was kind of like, no, I'm not going to let this person go after these people right now. I'm going to kind of isolate them a little bit. I think that was really important.
Oh yeah.
So kudos to
100%.
Pax for handling it properly too.
Mhm.
So, yeah. All right. Any last thoughts on this, Mike? Thanks for being in chat today while we
Yeah.
shared your wild story that we're all mad about and also happy about.
I've been a little bit quiet about this because the idea of missing someone's lines in Veil and having that like be your entire prep for a session is my nightmare.
Of course, yeah.
Like especially with how bad my ADHD is, like I've had something similar happen where I also with Monster of the Week, I had someone who had veiled blood and didn't really realize that until like a session or two in, and then they're like, no, this is a really big deal. I went, oh no, I should have put that. This was before we had intrinsic as an option in our lines and veils. So I hadn't put like, yeah, blood is gonna be a guaranteed part of this because it's Monster of the Week, it's horror, it's people die, and usually there's some blood involved in that. So that just reminded me of some of my own personal, not terrible, but my personal foibles and not quite horror stories. And then the idea of having an entire table walk away from a game, I was just like the psychic damage of imagining being in a similar situation just like kind of just unlocked me for a minute.
Yeah, it's fair.
But yeah, especially I was hoping to all possibilities that this person just oh, it's ignorance, not malevolence, and then everything Mike put in chat, I was just like, oh no, this person
They're
just sucks.
yeah.
Never
Yeah.
mind. Like nothing is recoverable here. Fire them off in a cannon.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Looks like there was a maturity level issue, is what was mentioned in chat, that the person might have been just fresh out of college. So there's maybe a maturity, like, I we've all been the bad person at a table at some point in our lives. So like
Ugh.
that is true.
Ow.
But like I think it's better a lesson. I wish this GM was listening so I could talk to them directly, because I would like it. Like I would like to be able to tell this GM that it's okay to just say, "Hey guys, one of your lines really hit something that I had planned for the story. Um, can we just take like a 15-minute break and let me kind of like try to retool my story to see if I can fix it to make it work around it?" Because I think like that is a good way to solve this problem of being like, because I think it will be hard, like, well, if everyone at the table is saying that child harm is bad for them, I think being like, well, child harm is intrinsic to the story, is it going to be a solution? Because everyone's like, okay, cool, we're all going to leave before the game starts instead of in the middle of the game, but still. So I think there's got to be a situation of being like, hey, can I just take like 5 minutes, 15 minutes, just kind of like fix something, and then we'll get back into it? Because I want to make sure you're all having a good time at the table and you're safe. Because I did it, I mean, for Happy Jacks, I ran the Jaws one shot this summer, and pretty big part of Jaws is a kid getting eaten by a shark. And I had to talk to my players and go like, are you going to be okay with me doing the Kittner boy getting eaten? And I had a very hard no. And so I was like, okay, I can either not run the Jaws story, or I can find a way to tell the Jaws story without the Kittner boy getting eaten. And it turned out it was fine to make an adult that got eaten instead of a kid, but it was a thing where it's like, you can't be so super duper married to like the exact story that you're trying to tell.
Yep.
But yeah.
And I honestly
But
would I would bad cop you on this one, because I would go full disappointed mom on this person, if especially if they were young, full disappointed mom. And you can give them the kindness and the benefit of the doubt, because I'm sure that is worth giving, but I have I don't I do my best to give grace, but when it comes to safety tools, it is so important to me that
agreed.
I don't abide anyone not using them
Oh,
in the way that they were meant to
100%
be.
agree.
And I think
Yeah.
that because
Agreed.
I'm so passionate about it, I would not be nice about it. I would do my best,
Yeah.
but I would not be nice. I would be like, what is wrong with you?
Yeah, let me
But,
rephrase myself. I don't. I that person. I would like them to be better, because I assume they're going to try to run tables at future cons. So I
Oh,
would like them to
absolutely.
have learned from this, to be like, hey, don't do this. But also, I imagine there are other people who are going to be listening to this podcast who might find themselves in a situation similar to this GM, and so I want them to know that it's okay to give your players a 15 or 20-minute break in the game to go, I need to
Absolutely.
fix this game based, because like what Rose said is so valid. Like, I'm so
Yes.
scared that something I have prepared will
Hmm.
be right on someone's trigger, and I don't know how to tell the story without that there. And like, maybe it's hard to think of that solution while you're also running the game for people. So it's okay to take a break and be like, I want to put a pin in this.
Yeah.
I want to try to fix this so we can have fun.
Taking a break is absolutely valid, and I think part of the reason that I am such a hard ass is because I've had some of the like some of my I've had experiences like this. So I actually have hit someone's line while I was at a table, and I had to learn that someone using the X card on me isn't a slight on me as a person.
Yes.
I didn't do it intentionally. That's not like that wasn't the goal. They had a problem with the subject matter. So what was important is to not do that again. Let's, rewind, change the scene, move on. When you get X carded for the first time, sorry, Rose, I know you want to talk.
Yeah.
When you get
Yeah.
X carded for the first time, there's that little like ego thing of like, oh no, I fucked up. I'm the worst person ever. Like, I'm the worst human. And then you come to terms with it's not you that's the problem. It was the subject matter, and learning to be a little, and like being able to rewind it, change it, and understand uh how to move on from that and not take it personally, and make the change needed so that everyone has fun. um hopefully I don't ever want to have the experience of everyone getting up and leaving the table, but again, duress drove everyone to that point.
Yeah.
So
And they tried so hard not to. That's the thing. They tried
yep,
so hard not to. Yeah.
they did their
Sorry, Rose.
absolute
Yeah.
best. Rose.
I was gonna say, like, if we were going to throw a bit of advice out to if anyone finds themselves in a similar
Mhm.
situation, especially if you're in a games on demand kind of thing. Not running the game is entirely a valid option.
Hmm.
It just being either drop that game entirely, if you have another one shot, in your back pocket. Heck, you play for the queen, you play like Mike said, or something like that, where you just kind of go, okay, so I'm gonna table that entire concept. Did anybody else have something? No. Okay, well, have a good one, kind of
Yeah,
thing.
100%. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Like if you don't like that's totally that's also a valid response. Having I know a lot of people who go to conventions will have multiple games with them, so it's not a
Hmm.
hard thing to run something else or to find like be like, okay, this doesn't work. Yeet, let's reskin this adventure entirely. You know.
Yeah.
Um,
Unfortunately, this GM had a uh, drastic and continuous lack in judgment for the entire time.
Yeah. I
yep.
think especially for really big common triggers like harm to children, harm to animals, those kinds of things, you definitely should have something as a backup in case someone's not like going to be okay with it, because it's a very common thing to run into with a line in Vale's document. It's a very common thing people to be bothered by. I have definitely been at many a game where my line about harm to animals has been ignored and flaunted, and like it's not flaunted. I don't think anyone's doing it maliciously, but it's just a thing that people casually will just do, and it's really frustrating for me because like I'm very clear about like this thing, but a lot of people seem to think like, okay, no harm to animals, but we can have wolves and stuff in the story, right? And it's like, well, what happens to the wolves if you fight them? Like that's harm to
Yeah.
animals, and like I don't
They
want to hear
they
about
take a
wolves yelping.
nap.
Yeah,
And
I do.
there is
Yeah.
Mhm. Go ahead. No, I was just gonna say there's nothing wrong with doing a check-in because I actually that's one of my lines is harm to animals, and I always say that in my games. The only exceptions I make are essentially for games where you are animals, like Wander Home, and
Mhm.
for like Good Soup, you're animals. There is no way to avoid harm to you because you are the that's who you are as
You're kind of like
adventurers.
sapient animals too, which is
Yeah,
part of the difference,
exactly.
I think. Yeah.
So like yeah, but I always like try to clarify that in case someone wants to butt actually me. But we were playing in our game of the Wild Sea it was a great example because I was running this for PTI this year. Um, they were facing a leviathan, and typically a leviathan can either be one of two things. They're either like a literal entity that could just be space and time, because there's one that's literally just like a freaking storm that moves around the world like, hey, I'm just here, bye, and one that warps your mind. But this particular one I made a gecko, and I didn't think about that line until we got there, and I went, wait a minute, they have to attack this thing. I played myself, and I actually had to stop and check in with the table because to me, my brain was seeing it as a dragon in the D&D dragons, like Dungeons and Dragons sense. So for me, it wasn't hitting that line because my perception of the entity was different than like an actual gecko, right? But I wanted to check in and make sure with my players, this might not be okay for them. And I was like, okay, I was already thinking of alternate ways to for them to win the fight without hurting the gecko if they needed to. In my case, I got lucky. They were like, no, this is fine. We also see it as a dragon kind of entity, and we're gonna move forward with the way with things as is. But there is nothing wrong with doing that as a GM and checking in and making sure that everyone's okay. Because sometimes people are too shy or too like they don't want to ruin the game by communicating that line. And I think part of like being a GM is encouraging that communication so you don't accidentally ruin the game for them because they never said anything, you know?
Yeah. I I don't like to harm animals in games. I don't like having animal harm in games, but I also run games for kids a lot, and kids want nothing more in D&D than to have pets. And it is a constant thing of any sort of creature that has legs and eyes that they come across, they want to make it their pet. And so I have very much had to tell the kids at my tables like I don't want to attack your pets. I don't want to do that. So my rule with their pets is your pets are functionally immortal, but you can't bring them into combat. Like I'm basically like, because I'm not giving you free actions in combat that can do damage and harm without me harming them. And I'm like, I absolutely do not want to hurt animals, but if you bring your animals into combat and make them start attacking things, I'm going to treat them like monsters would treat combatants. And I go, and I don't want to do it, so don't make me do that. So we have a very strict understanding of your pets are flavor, and that's it. And not flavor in the yummy animals flavor, but flavor in storytelling flavor.
Yes.
And then I have a kid in one of my Saturday games who, on our first day, talking about lines and veils and X cards, he X carded death. We can't kill anybody in this game. Which is wild for a D&D game, but we're doing it. And I'm just
I
like,
love that so much.
Nice.
yeah,
I love
whenever
that
somebody would die in combat, I just say they're knocked out. And that's it. And like, I had one kid get like really nervous about what that meant for game. He's like, how are we going to get XP? How are we going to level up? And I go, hey, you don't have to worry about it because I'm going to run the game. So I will make sure you level up. I'll make sure you get XP, but we're not going to kill anybody in this game. And that's going to be fine. We're going to knock out all the bad guys. We're going to knock out all the monsters. And that's going to be what we're going to do. And I'll have to think of some weird reason why it makes sense that the people you're knocking out aren't coming back the next day with their heads sore and ready for revenge. So yeah, it's just like, it's just what it is. Everybody's getting arrested somehow, but
Everyone has a rule of you only get one shot. You only
Yeah.
get to fight somebody once, and if you lose, you're done.
yeah, we're like,
It's
hey,
really-
they beat me up yesterday. Why would I want to fight them again? They got me. They're
No,
too
they-
good for me. Yeah.
Yep. It's funny that you say that because I actually did have that, and this is a testament to how lines and veils fluctuate. I had that as a line for me shortly after my father passed. I didn't want to play games where death was on the table because I was grieving like in real time, but I wanted to have the escape of being in a TTRPG game, and I was in a game at the time that a friend at the time was running, and I told them this. And the interesting thing is the GM took me seriously and said, "Okay, let me find a workaround." But one of the players got so angry at me because it's not worth it if you can't die or something is what they said. Like it takes like all the stakes away. Like they gave a whole list of reasons why I should be okay with having death, and I'm like, it's literally a line for me. I don't have to play if
Yeah.
if it's that important to you. And ultimately the GM was like, no, I have a way to like do this. So you didn't actually die in the game. You were actually, I think, turned into like essentially a soul stone, and you could be resurrected if you died in game. Before you died in game, like if the stone was destroyed, permadeath, but like you could be like, as long as that stone was there, you were technically still alive. And like
Yeah.
there are ways to work around things. It's not hard. It just takes a little bit of creativity, you know.
Yeah. And like,
Absolutely.
I hate that argument of taking death out of a story takes the stakes out of a story because it's just wholly not true. It always happens. Whenever someone like talks about like a prequel movie and they're like, well, if we know there's no suspense because we know they're not going to die in the movie. It's like there's lots of things that can happen in a story that don't involve somebody dying. Like there's lots of ways that a bad guy can win in a story and things can get bad for the characters that aren't death. Like there's a lot. There's like people you love might be mad at you. People, like might leave you in your life. You might be lonely. You might end up trapped somewhere. You might end up getting beaten up instead of killed and put in a jail somewhere that you don't want to be put. Like there's lots of things. Like jail could be a line too, obviously. But like, yes, there's like so many ways to tell stories. And I do think it's such lazy storytelling to be like, there's no stakes because someone can't die. Like, no, there are. There's plenty of stakes. There's plenty of stakes. I sell them at the store. I had similar, Vixie, after my father died, I had a game that I played online of kids on bikes, and I made my character have had recently lost her father because it just made sense to me to explain like why she was so angry and like all that kind of stuff. And she was like the grumpy teenager character, and I did that. And I don't know why the GM thought this was a good idea, but like then the reveal was that like the weird talking cat that was like the supernatural creature in the Kids on Bike story was my father, like trapped in a cat, like the spirit of my dead father was in this cat's body, and like it was my dad talking to me. And I was so not okay with it. Like it was so like, no, please, like I'm not looking for someone to magically give me my father back right now because I'm grieving my actual dead father. And it was such like it was such a thing that like I know that they just thought of it as like, oh, this would be a cool thing to do, and not realizing how much of like my grief was put. I mean, maybe I shouldn't have played the character to begin with. Maybe I shouldn't have put that in the story when it was like I was not sure about comfort levels. But I was so shocked when suddenly, like this talking cat was my dead father. I'm like, are you kidding? I did not open door. I'm actually really bad at the table at X carding. Like I will shut down before I X card. I will shut down before I open door. Like that's why like for me the lines and veils document is so very, very important, because when I'm actually triggered, like I completely go inside myself for a little bit, and like I won't think
Right.
of anything and I won't notice anything, and it's really rough for me. So like I've had a lot of bad times at games that have resulted in me not being able to X card, and then the scene just keeps happening or whatever, and I can't stop it because I'm not like, for some reason I have a really hard time pushing the X card and like making it happen when it's happening. But
Yeah, and I very much like when I GM games, I always try to like do the talking and give people like, hey, are you like, what's the check-in? Talk to me. Like, let me know how you're feeling. We can work through this together. Like, we can talk it out. Like, I always try to be very mindful of like the people at the table, especially like even if it's semi-questionable. Like with, I have 2 games where I featured pregnant people, and I know that's a line for people. Like, no, for some people it's no harm. Some people don't want anything to do with pregnant people at all. And I always go to my players, I was like, this is going to feature a pregnant person. This is what's going to happen. Like, nothing bad is going to happen to them. They're just in there because for context, or they're just in there because a birth needs to happen. And this birth happens to be intrinsic to the game. Is everyone okay with this? Like, again, for me, the biggest part of safety tools is communication. All of these are tools to facilitate communication at the table. And sometimes like you said, it's really hard when you are dealing with something to be able to communicate that. Um, and I think like for the GM, they do need to practice a bit of mindfulness. And if I see you shutting down, like if I see obvious signs of shutting down, it's like I need to ask you, hey, do you need to X card this? Which I've also been in that situation where I was playing a game with someone, and as a player, I accidentally triggered them and I didn't realize it until me being me went, like, saw them breathing heavy, saw them like really getting into their own head, and kind of was watching the scene devolve. And I looked at them and said, do you need to X card this? Because this seems like it's really tough on you. Like, I don't have a problem pretending this never happened at all, essentially. Like, we can just retcon this entire scene. And they were like, it took them a second, and they were like, yeah, I think we need to do that. And I was like, let's go ahead and do that then. I'd rather you have fun than sit here and be stressed about a situation that you don't need to be stressed about. And that's how we handled it. But, being mindful and having that communication with people and being able to kind of say, hey, are you okay? And if you're not okay, how do we fix it? Is really important as well. And it can be, I know how hard that is. You know, but it's also something that can be super helpful once you master it, you know?
yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I think I think we might be good. I mean, any last thoughts before I wrap us up? Oh, Rose, I feel bad because you've been out of focus for like that entire conversation, and now
Oh my god, and I
back in
just
focus.
came back into focus.
Yes. Like I think your thumbs up, I think, was the thing that your camera needed to focus on. Yeah.
I
Oh,
will
no.
start doing hand motions to see if I can get my camera to focus next time.
Jazz hands.
Little finger
Jazz
puppets.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. All right.
Ugh.
Well, hey y'all, thank you for joining us for season 36, episode 13. Please support Jess Penley, she/her of Underground Oracle Publishing. Thank you to our chat mod James V and to our amazing Patreons to keep us ad-free and independent. happyjacks.org/Patreon. I'm Riley, and I currently am part of. There's a Kickstarter for a new I think it's actually still in pre-launch mode right now, but it's a horror comic called Horror Not Hate. It's a charity comic that is benefiting both immigration and trans law issues.
Yay.
And I think that currently one of my more recent, I know it's definitely up on my Instagram, there's a link to it. but it's a bit.ly link. But it is it's looking at fundraise. I have my first ever comic that I've written that is in there, and I actually just got the pages back this week, so I got to see it for the first time.
Yay!
It is a comic called Shifted, and it uses a werewolf transformation as a metaphor for going through the wrong puberty as a trans teen. So that is what it's a
Oh,
story. It's been in my
oh,
head for like a decade, and
I
so
love
yeah, I
that.
know it's psychic
Oh,
damage
it's
to
so
Rose. I'm
good.
sorry, but it's been in my head for well over a decade, and I haven't been able to get it out there anywhere. And so that is out there. So you can find me on Blue Sky as Riley Silverman. You can find me on Instagram as Riley Silverman. So that is on there. And yeah. Oh, I just got announced this week. I'm going to be GMing next May at Travis McElroy's Champions Grove in Ohio. So if that's a thing that
What?
you would like to attend and you want to sign up for it, I think there's still seats available for that. So check that out.
Yay!
That got announced this week. But yeah, otherwise I will hand it off to my other co-host to say their farewells and plugs.
Rose, do you
uh,
want to go next? Do you want me to go?
why don't you go next? Because I want to yap about something we'll be working on together.
Okay. So excited for that. All right. So hey everybody, my name is Vixie Bell. I'm your friendly neighborhood player and GM and person here at Happy Jacks RPG and over at the Pocket Dragon Pub, which is my own actual play channel. You can find me just in a whole bunch of other places. Follow me on socials at Vixie Bell or at Pocket Dragon Pub. Either of those two, you'll see this lovely face. Coming up for me, we are entering our final episode of Pirates of Dark Water, which we are doing here on the Happy Jacks Network. I am so excited to bring this adventure to a conclusion. I'm very sad about not playing with this group of players. They are fantastic. Like they really have understood the assignment of the and embody the essence of like the cartoon we're trying to capture. So if you haven't listened to all of the episodes yet, please do. happyjacks.org/pirates of dark water. I've said that intro so many times it's memorized now. But yes, please check it out and join us next Saturday for our final episode. Super excited about that. And then for the holidays this month, I have not one but a two-shot series that I'm GMing.
Ooh.
If anyone's ever heard of Flabbergasted, come with me to the Roaring Twenties and join me as my table decides to plan the social event of the season. Now, if everything could stop going wrong, that'd be great. Thanks. But yes,
That sounds so
Flabbergasted is
fun.
it's a comedy, so it is spastic and hilarious. So far, someone's made out with the butler. We lost someone's gotten kidnapped, and someone is day drinking. We're doing great. We're doing great. It's a
Only
wild
one
time
person is day drinking?
right now, anyway. We'll see what happens. But yeah, so those are the two big things that I have coming up. And hopefully, fingers crossed, if all things go well, you guys will see me in person at OrcCon in February. That's the
Ooh.
only other major announcement that I have that isn't coming from Rose right now because I'm going to save the other one for you. Because after Pirates finishes, I will be working on yet one more thing. But I'm going to throw it over to you,
Yes.
Rose, so you can talk about that.
Yeah, so I am Rose. I'm at Rose RPGs on Blue Sky, which I will probably start actually posting from, mainly to hype up the fact that I am going to be running masks here on Happy Jacks. Our session 0 is set for the 20th, and I will have with me the fantastic, no, other way, the fantastic Vixie Bell
Yay!
playing in that campaign. We'll be missing you for the session 0, but I cannot wait to get you to the table for session 1. Um, we are going to be playing Masks Neon Knights, a neon soaked Gotham to Halcyon's metropolis in a city called Tempest. So,
Ooh.
I am so excited for this game. I am so excited for you all to see some familiar faces at the table. We'll have more of those mentioned coming up. But yeah, I this is my first campaign on the network, and I am so unbelievably excited to bring superhero shenanigans and heartfelt moments to all of you.
Excellent.
I'm
Well, we
super
look forward
excited.
to that. I look forward to seeing
We
both of y'all on a show.
Yay.
That's amazing. All right. Well, with that out of the way, we're going to leave you with a song tonight. Our song is Siren Song by the Dread Crew of Oddwood. And so we're going to kick over to that. Thank you all very much for listening to us yap.
Lost their way and drifting at sea. Time and life had ceased to be. Lust for more, forevermore. Held this crew's hope of reaching shore. Off the bow, a thick fog crept, while tightening empty stomachs wept. For nowhere else was land in sight to sail on or sail blind. Fighting just to stay awake as tired bones began to wake. But surely as their lives were through, winsome voices called this crew. Release your strength and come to me. No need for hope, now you are free. Let these words compel your heart. All pain and sorrow will depart. Their song that cast an enticing allure, rendering all their judgment obscure. Into the mist the vessel turned, for safety no one was concerned. Splintered masts and shattered hulls, unseen by some with eyes and skulls, mocked them from the hungry rocks, for they would never reach the docks. Striking hard against the reef, the crew would soon find relief. Oblivious to untold doom, and what the voices would consume. Release your strength and come to me. No need for hope, now you are free. Let these words compel your heart. All pain and sorrow will depart. When ageless beauty seeped aboard, no one cared to raise their sword. Glistening naked bodies swarmed, and soon the feast began. Lungs were punctured, faces gored, flesh was eaten, blood was